The empty space in the garage where my 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback screamed louder than any fire alarm. It was a visual silence, an obscene void no oil-stained concrete que meu brain refusava processar. Eu estude at a garagem entrada, meu travel backpack slipando da minha shoulder e etando no chão com dole tude que ecoou pelas entranhas paredes. O smell de old gasolina, carnaúba wax e aged leather still lingered in the air, olfatórios ghosts de uma car que eu expendi 5 anos restaurando bolt por bolt. That car wasn't just a vehicle. It was the only thing meu avô deixou-me antes que o Alzheimer tomasse seu mente e depois seu corpo. Era meu âncora. E agora, em seu lugar, there was only an oil stain and a dusty exercise bike my mother swore she'd use in 1998. Eu caminhei para o centro da empty space. Meus passos soavam pesados, like hammer blows. Eu olhei para o benchmark. A chave de reserva estava gone. O transfer document, o pink slip, eu guardava locado em safe no top shelf, não estava também. O safe estava aberto, não broken into, mas aberto com a combinação. Uma combinação que só 3 pessoas no mundo sabiam. Eu, meu pai e minha mãe. Eu entrei na casa pelo service door que conectava a garagem à cozinha. O contraste era stark. A garagem era fria e empty. A kitchen was warm, smelling of cinnamon and fresh coffee, bathed in California sunlight. My mother, Linda, was sitting at a granite table, flipando por uma luxuosa magazine de viagens. Meu pai, Robert, estava na counter, tipando salting no seu iPad com satisfeito sorriso no rosto. They looked like the picture of suburban tranquility. They looked like people who hadn't just committed a crime. Where is my car? Meu voz veio low, scratchy, as if I'd swallowed glass. Minha mãe levantou da magazine. She didn't seem surprised. There was no shock, just a slight twitch do her lips, that nervous tic she tem quando sabia que precisava manejar unpleasant situation. Oh, Lucas, you're back early, she jens, closendo a magazine sobre uma foto de overwater bungalows in Bora Bora. We thought you wouldn't be back from the conference until tomorrow night. Where's the Mustang, Mum? I repeated, feeling Miss hands clenching into fists at my sides. My father sighed, put his iPad aside e took off his reading glasses. He looked at me com aquela decepcionado pai que usava a vida toda para me fazer sentir pequena, mesmo que eu tivesse 30 anos e tenha minha própria engenharia firme. Sit down, son, ele jens. We need to have a family talk, an adult conversation. I'm not sitting down, I replied. I want to saber quem tomou meu carro. Se foi roubado, eu estou ligando a polícia agora. Eu guardei meu celular. It wasn't stolen, meu father said, fazendo sinal. It was reallocated. We sold it, Lucas. O mundo parou. O rum do refrigerador fadou. Os pássaros cantados foram silenciados. Tudo que remaneu foi o som de blood palpando nos meus ouvidos. Você... o quê? We sold it, minha mãe interveio, usando sua voz mais soft e terapêutica. It was an incredible opportunity, dear. A collector saw the car in the garage last week when the gate was open and made a cash offer. We couldn't refuse. It was destiny. Destiny? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. That car wasn't yours. The title was in my name. Did you break into my safe? We didn't break in, my father corrected, offended. You gave us the combination years ago in case of an emergency. And this, Lucas, was an emergency. What emergency? I looked around the immaculate kitchen. Is the house on fire? Does someone need a kidney transplant? It's your sister, my mother said, her eyes glistening with tears she could produce on command. Tiffany. Oh God, the situation was terrible. You know how she dreamed of the perfect honeymoon, the Maldives, the Six Senses resort. But with the extra wedding costs, the buffet, the imported flowers, the budget exploded. She was devastated, Lucas. She called crying yesterday, saying they would have to go to Mexico. Mexico! Imagine the humiliation. I looked at them. I really looked at them. I saw two strangers who shared my DNA. You sold my $70,000 car to pay for a luxury trip for Tiffany? Don't be selfish, my father said, hardening his tone. Your sister deserves this. She's had a difficult year. And you, well, you barely use that car. It's a toy, a hobby. Family helps family. We made an executive decision to ensure your sister's happiness. The money covered the honeymoon, the first-class upgrade, and there was even a bit left over to help with the down payment on their new house. They didn't just sell my past. They financed the golden child's future with the sweat of my labor. The Mustang wasn't a toy. It was 5 years of nights and weekends. It was my grandfather's hands teaching me to tune the carburetor. It was my therapy. Who did you sell it to? I asked, feeling a cold, dangerous calm take hold of me. That doesn't matter, my father said, picking up his iPad again. It's done. The money has been transferred, the tickets have been bought, they're boarding tonight. And, speaking of which, since you're here and our Range Rover is at the shop, we need you to take us to the airport. We're going to meet Tiffany and Mark there to say goodbye. The audacity, the absolute unwavering audacity. They stole my car, sold it illegally, because they obviously forged my signature on the title, and now they wanted a ride to celebrate the crime? I should have screamed. I should have trashed the entire kitchen. But something about the mention of the airport ignited a light in the darkness of my anger. An idea formed. Not an idea of reparation, but of total destruction. All right, I said. My mother blinked, surprised by my quick capitulation. All right? You understand? I understand perfectly, I lied, forcing my facial muscles to relax. Family is family, right? Tiffany deserves to be happy. The car, it was just metal. I can restore another one. My mother smiled, relieved, and came to hug me. Her perfume, Chanel No. 5, made me nauseous. I knew you'd understand. You're a good boy, Lucas. Always so reasonable. Yes, I agreed, looking over her shoulder at my father, who was nodding in approval. I'm very reasonable. What time is the flight? At 9 p.m., my father said, but we want to get there early for the toast in the first-class lounge. Tiffany got passes for us too. We'll leave at 5 p.m. I'll be ready, I said. I'm going to take a shower. I went upstairs to my old room, which I used when I visited. I locked the door. The first thing I did wasn't to shower. It was to call my lawyer. David, I said when he answered, I need you to prepare a criminal complaint. Grand theft, document fraud, sale of stolen property. My parents. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Lucas, are you sure? This is nuclear. Once we file, they'll be escorted out in handcuffs. I'm sure, I replied, looking at the photo of my grandfather on the nightstand. But don't file yet. Wait for my signal. I have something to do first. Next, I opened my laptop. I knew their passwords. My father was a predictable man who used the dog's name and his birth year for everything. I accessed his email. I found the flight confirmations. Emirates Airlines, first class, Los Angeles to Malé with a layover in Dubai. 4 tickets. 4. I read the itinerary more carefully. Tiffany and Mark, Robert and Linda. My parents weren't just going to say goodbye. They were going along. They had used the money from my car to buy themselves a vacation too. Family honeymoon, the most narcissistic thing I'd ever seen. The total cost of the tickets was $42,000, almost 2/3 of the car's value. My hand hovered over the cancel reservation button. It would be easy. One click and the dream would end now. But no, that would be too impersonal. They needed to feel the loss. They needed to feel the ground disappear beneath their feet at the moment of greatest expectation, just as I had when I saw the empty garage. I closed the laptop. The shower could wait. I had a performance to deliver. At 5 p.m. sharp, I pulled my truck up in front of the house. My parents came out, dragging 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases. They looked like faded movie stars. My mother wore a wide-brimmed hat and dark sunglasses, even though it was already getting dark. My father wore a linen blazer that cost more than my first salary. "Put those in the truck bed carefully, Lucas," my father ordered, pointing to the suitcases. "That leather scratches easily." I loaded the suitcases in silence. Each one weighed like a corpse. I got into the driver's seat. They settled into the back seat, laughing and talking, ignoring my presence as if I were an Uber driver. The drive to LAX during rush hour is a test of anyone's patience. That night, it was a test of sanity. Traffic on the 405 was gridlocked, a river of red lights stretching to the horizon. Inside the cabin, the air was saturated with their toxic euphoria. "Tiffany just texted," my mother chirped, looking at her phone. "They're already at check-in." She said Mark is trying to upgrade to the presidential suite at the hotel. "Oh, Robert, we did the right thing. She's so happy." "Of course we did," my father agreed, opening a bottle of mineral water. "Lucas was too attached to that old tin can. It was a favor we did him. Material detachment is important." I looked in the rearview mirror. My eyes met my father's. "Old tin can?" I asked softly. "That car won Best Restoration at the Pasadena show last year, Dad." "Awards," he scoffed with a wave of his hand. "Vanity. What matters is life experience, the memories we're going to create in the Maldives. That's eternal." "Are you going too?" I asked, feigning innocence. There was a pause. A second of hesitation. "Well, yes," my mother admitted, adjusting her hat. "We decided last minute. Tiffany insisted. She said, 'Mom, it wouldn't be a complete celebration without you.' And since there was money left over from the sale." "Money left over?" I repeated. "Yes, the buyer paid $75,000, cash," my father boasted, letting slip the real amount. "A steal. $75,000 in cash, no taxes, no trace, and they thought I'd never find out. And the buyer, does he have the title?" I asked, aggressively changing lanes, making my mother grab the safety handle. "Of course, I signed for you," my father said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I made a pretty similar signature. No one at the DMV will notice. Stop worrying about bureaucratic details, Lucas. Enjoy the moment. Your sister is happy." I gripped the steering wheel until my fingers ached. Fraud, forgery, he just confessed, and I had my phone's voice recorder app on in the cup holder since we left home. "You're right," I said, looking at the approaching horizon of airport lights. LAX's illuminated pillars gleamed like portals to another world. Bureaucratic details are boring, but sometimes they're important. We entered the airport access road, the usual chaos of cars, buses, and honking police officers. Terminal B, Tom Bradley, my father instructed, they're flying international. I pulled the truck to the curb in the quick drop-off area. The no parking sign flashed above us. "I'll help with the bags," I said, turning off the engine. I got out and went to the truck bed. The air was heavy with the smell of aviation kerosene and exhaust. I took out the 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases and placed them on the sidewalk. My parents got out, adjusting their clothes. "Thanks for the ride, dear. Take care of the house while we're gone. And don't sulk about the car. When we get back, we can see about helping you buy a Honda Civic or something practical." I slammed the truck's tailgate shut. "Mom, Dad," I said, leaning against the truck body, "before you go in, there's something you need to know." "What is it now, Lucas?" My father looked at his Rolex watch, probably bought with my car's money, too. "We're late for champagne." "You're not going to the Maldives." They stopped. My mother let out a nervous laugh. "What do you mean? Of course we are. We have the tickets." "You had them," I corrected. I took my phone out of my pocket. "You see, I accessed Dad's email account 20 minutes ago while we were stuck in traffic. It's amazing what you can do with an airline app these days." I showed them the screen. The cancellation confirmation email gleamed in red letters. "Reservation canceled. Refund processed to original card." The original card was my corporate credit card, which my father had saved to his account years ago and used to pay the boarding fees, thinking I wouldn't notice the $300 charge amidst the larger cash transaction. "What did you do?" my mother whispered, the color draining from her face under the heavy makeup. "I canceled everything. Tiffany's tickets, Mark's tickets, your tickets, and the hotels," I continued, my voice calm but sharp. "Nobody is going anywhere." "You're insane," my father yelled, stepping towards me. "Undo this now. It's your sister's dream." "Her dream was financed with my nightmare," I replied, not backing down. "You stole my car. You forged my signature. That's a federal crime, Dad. You should be worried about prison, not the Maldives." At that moment, my mother's phone rang. It was Tiffany. I could hear her screams through the phone, even without it being on speaker. She must have been at the check-in counter, discovering that her first-class ticket no longer existed. "Mom, what's happening? The woman says it's canceled. She says it was card fraud." Tiffany was screaming hysterically. My mother looked at me with pure hatred. "You're a monster. You destroyed your sister's honeymoon over an old car? You're petty, envious, and sad." "Maybe," I shrugged, "but I'm the rightful owner of the car you sold. And, speaking of which," I pointed towards the terminal entrance. 2 airport police officers were walking towards us. Not because I had called them, but because we had been stopped in a restricted zone for too long. But it served my purpose perfectly. I already called the buyer. I revealed the last card. I found the sales contract in Dad's office drawer before we left. His name is Mr. Henderson, right? I called him. I told him the car was stolen and the title was fake. He wasn't happy. He said he's going to the police to turn in the car and report whoever sold it. My father staggered. He clutched his chest. The arrogance vanished, replaced by the real terror of a man who knows he's been caught. "Lucas, son," he stammered, "don't do this. We can fix it. We can pay you back. I have investments." "You have nothing, Dad," I cut him off. "You spent everything. That's why you stole my car. I saw the overdue mortgage notices on the kitchen counter." That was the first layer of hidden truth. They weren't rich. They were bankrupt, living off appearances. The car sale wasn't a luxury. It was an act of desperation to maintain appearances before Tiffany's wealthy fiancé's family. "Please," my mother begged, grabbing my arm. "They're going to arrest us." "Lucas, think of the family." I looked at the designer suitcases on the sidewalk. I looked at the gleaming terminal. I looked at the parents who had raised me to be a resource, not a son. "I am thinking of the family," I said, letting go of her arm. "I'm thinking of my grandfather. He once told me, 'A man is only as good as his word.' You broke yours." I got into the truck. "The ride ends here," I said through the open window. "Good luck explaining to Tiffany why she'll be spending her honeymoon at a Motel 6. And good luck with the police. Mr. Henderson said he wouldn't settle." I sped off. I left them on the LAX sidewalk, surrounded by useless suitcases, with the sound of sirens approaching in the distance. In the rearview mirror, I saw my mother sit on a suitcase and cry, while my father fruitlessly tried to talk on the phone, gesticulating at the empty air. The road back home was clear. Traffic had thinned. I turned on the radio. Classic rock was playing, the same song my grandfather used to listen to when we worked on the Mustang. I didn't have my car back yet, but as I drove through the Los Angeles night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I was in control of the wheel, and for the first time, the road ahead was all mine. But the story didn't end there. The airport was just the beginning of the fall. When I got home, I discovered that the debt they tried to cover with my car had much deeper and more dangerous roots than a simple overdue mortgage. And Tiffany wasn't just the spoiled bride, she was the accomplice. The drive back from LAX was a blur of red brake lights and the mental static of someone who had just detonated a nuclear bomb in their own life. My phone vibrated incessantly on the passenger seat. 37 missed calls from Tiffany, 12 from my mother, 5 from unknown numbers I presumed to be lawyers or police officers. I didn't answer. I let the device hum against the leather seat like a dying insect, the perfect soundtrack for my family's funeral. When I parked in my parents' driveway, the silence of affluent Pasadena seemed like an accusation. Neighboring houses were dark, perfectly manicured lawns sleeping under the moonlight, oblivious to the crime that had occurred in the garage next door. I entered the house. The air was stale, with that sweet, cloying smell of potpourri my mother used to mask the scent of mold on the walls. Now I knew the mold wasn't just structural, it was financial and moral. I went straight to my father's office. I didn't need to break in. The door was unlocked. An arrogant oversight by someone who thought the mechanic's son would never be interested in papers. I turned on the green banker's lamp. The drawer where I found the car's sales contract was ajar. But now I needed to dig deeper. The desperation in my father's eyes at the airport wasn't just about a lost trip. It was the terror of someone out of options. No one commits some federal crime against their own child just to pay for a resort in the Maldives. Unless the Maldives is a euphemism for escape without extradition. I started pulling out folders, mortgages, second mortgage, third mortgage with a predatory private lender, maxed out credit cards. And then I found the red folder at the bottom of the file marked only as Project T&M. I opened it. It wasn't a renovation project. It was records of bank transfers, dozens of them, all coming out of my parents' retirement accounts and going to an LLC registered under Mark's name, Tiffany's fiancé. The total amount exceeded $600,000 over the past 2 years. I read the printed emails attached. Mark wasn't just a real estate entrepreneur, as Tiffany boasted at Christmas dinners. He was a failed cryptocurrency gambler who had dragged my parents into a pyramid scheme. They weren't just funding the honeymoon, they were funding the couple's survival. The Mustang, my Mustang, was the last drop of blood they could squeeze from a stone to prevent Mark from being arrested for fraud before the wedding. They sold my past to cover his criminal future, I whispered to the empty room. The sound of tires screeching in the driveway snapped me out of my trance. Headlights swept across the office window. I peered through the blinds. A black Uber stopped abruptly. The back door opened and Tiffany got out. She wasn't wearing a wedding dress or fancy travel clothes. She was wearing a sweatshirt, her face swollen and red, her usually impeccable blonde hair looking like a rat's nest. Mark wasn't with her. She ran to the front door and started pounding on it. "Lucas, I know you're in there. Open this door now, you selfish bastard." I walked down the stairs slowly. The icy calm that had possessed me at the airport was still there, an armor protecting my broken heart. I opened the door. Tiffany lunged to hit me, her long nails aiming for my face, but I caught her wrist in midair. She was weak in character and weak physically. "Where are Mom and Dad?" she screamed, struggling. "The airport police took them to a room. They wouldn't let me in. What did you do?" "I did what they taught me," I replied, releasing her arm with a slight push that made her stumble back. "I protected what is mine." "You canceled the tickets! You blocked the cards! Mark is in the airport lobby trying to call investors because we have nowhere to sleep tonight." "Investors?" I laughed, leaning against the doorframe. "You mean the other victims of Mark's Ponzi scheme? Or are you talking about the loan sharks Dad is paying with my inheritance?" Tiffany froze. The hysterical crying stopped instantly, replaced by a look of pure terror. You looked at the papers?" she whispered. "I looked at Project T&M, Tiffany. I know Mark lost everything. I know your new house is rented. I know Dad liquidated his 401k to cover the holes left by your brilliant fiancé. And I know my car, Grandpa's car, was sold not to pay for champagne in the Maldives, but to pay bail for a civil lawsuit Mark has in Nevada. Am I right?" She didn't deny it. She collapsed on the porch steps, covering her face with her hands. "We were going to pay it back," she sobbed, her voice muffled. "Mark has a new business. It was going to boom next month. We just needed time. The Maldives were to keep up appearances. If investors knew we canceled the honeymoon, they'd know we're broke. It was all image, Lucas. All of it. And to maintain your image, you decided to steal from me?" I said, feeling disgust rise in my throat. "You knew the title was fake. You knew they were selling my car." She lifted her head. "Lucas, it's just a car. You have money. You have your company. We were drowning. Dad said you wouldn't even notice for a few weeks, and by then, Mark would already have the money to buy it back." "Just a car?" I repeated, stepping down to her level. That car was the only thing Grandpa recognized in his last days. When he no longer knew my name, he knew the sound of that engine. That car was my memory of him. And you sold it like scrap metal to save a con artist's skin. I'm your sister, she screamed, appealing to blood. No, I replied, turning my back. You are an accomplice, and I suggest you get a good lawyer for Mark, and for yourself. Because Mr. Henderson, the car buyer, has already been informed that he bought stolen property, and he doesn't seem like the type of man who likes to be deceived. I closed the door in her face. I locked it. I heard her scream and cry for another 10 minutes, until the Uber, which she probably couldn't afford, honked and she left. The next morning, reality came knocking. Not the police, but Mr. Henderson. He called me at 8 a.m. He was a businessman, direct and furious, but pragmatic. We arranged to meet at the Pasadena police station. When I arrived, I saw my Mustang parked in the impound lot. It was dusty from the road, but intact. The Highland green color gleamed under the morning sun like a promise of redemption. Seeing the car there, away from the safe garage, hurt me physically. I entered the police station. My parents were there. They had spent the night in jail. My mother was without makeup, looking 20 years older, sitting on a metal bench, clutching a fake designer bag to her chest. My father was being interrogated in a glass-walled room. Mr. Henderson was talking to the detective. He saw me and extended his hand. "Lucas Miller?" he asked. He was a tall, gray-haired man. "I'm very sorry for this confusion. Your father, he was very convincing. He said you had moved to Europe and wanted to sell quickly." "He has a talent for fiction," I replied, shaking his hand. "Thank you for bringing the car. I don't mess with fake titles, kid. As soon as you called me, I knew it was trouble. But," he hesitated, "I paid him $75,000 in cash. The police seized what was in their suitcase at the airport, but $20,000 is missing."
"They spent it or hid it?" "They probably transferred it to their son-in-law," I said. "I'll make sure you're reimbursed, Mr. Henderson, even if I have to sell their house to do it." The car release process was bureaucratic and slow. I had to prove ownership, show restoration records, confirm the forged signature. While I was filling out the paperwork, a police officer brought my parents to the processing area. They saw me. My mother stood up, her handcuffs clinking. "Lucas," she cried, "Lucas, drop the charges, please. They'll prosecute us for interstate fraud. Say it was a misunderstanding. Say you gave us permission." My father didn't yell. He just looked at me with cold contempt, the gaze of a man who still believed he had a right to me and my possessions. "You're an ingrate," he hissed as he passed me, escorted by an officer. "You destroyed your family over metal and rubber." I stopped signing the form and looked at him. "No, Dad," I said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped financing it. And as for metal and rubber, they have more soul than the three of you put together." They were led to the back of the police station. I felt no pity. I only felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. The toxic umbilical cord had finally been cut, cauterized by law. I left the police station with the Mustang keys in my hand. The metal was cold and comforting. I walked to the lot. I opened the driver's door. The smell of old leather and gasoline enveloped me like my grandfather's embrace. I turned the key. The V8 engine roared to life, a guttural, powerful sound that vibrated the ground beneath my feet. It was the sound of freedom. I drove away from there. I didn't go back to my parents' house. There was nothing there for me. My clothes and personal belongings? I could buy others. Childhood photos? They were records of a lie. I drove to the coast, taking the Pacific Coast Highway.
The wind on my face, the sea to my right. The legal outcome took months. My parents were indicted for fraud, forgery, and theft. To avoid a long prison sentence, they accepted a plea bargain. They lost their house to pay Mr. Henderson and other creditors. They now live in a one-bedroom apartment in the valley, living on minimal social security. Tiffany and Mark? Mark's cryptocurrency scheme collapsed a week after the airport fiasco. He was arrested for financial fraud in Nevada. Tiffany filed for divorce, claiming she knew nothing, a lie of course, and had to declare personal bankruptcy. She works as a receptionist at a beauty salon now and sends me emails on my birthday, which go straight to my spam folder. Me? I sold my engineering firm last year. I bought a large plot of land in Northern California, near Big Sur. I built a workshop. I restore classic cars now. I live surrounded by metal, oil, and honesty. Sometimes, when I'm driving the Mustang at sunset, I think about my family. I think about how perfect they looked in Christmas photos.
And I think about how easy it is to confuse parasites with relatives. They sold my car to buy an illusion. I got the car back and, in the process, bought my reality. It was the most expensive and most profitable deal of my life. And you, what do you value more? The peace of maintaining appearances or the freedom of living the truth? Would you have dropped the charges to save your parents from prison, or would you have let justice take its course? If this story about boundaries, betrayal, and the justice of the V8 revved your inner engine, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Was Lucas too harsh, or did they get what they deserved? Remember, you are not your family's bank, and your self-respect is not for sale. You are stronger than you think.